You all ready to spend a night in the woods? Well, that's what Arthur wanted, so here I am talking about Night in the Woods. Released in 2017 after a successful Kickstarter campaign, Night in the Woods is an exploration game with good characters and a deep story. And the ones who helped make this possible were Alec Halaka and Scott Benson, studio heads of Infinite Fall. They pushed this story about an anthropomorphic cat who returns to her hometown, only to find that life isn't what it's used to be there. Of course, Benson cited various influences to this game, including children's author Richard Scarry. And yeah, just look at everything. It almost feels like it's set in the same universe or something. And even then, what really makes it all work is the writing. I will go through some plot elements that will spoil the main story. But if you don't mind that, then get yourself a slice of pizza and enjoy our night in the woods. Right away, we begin with a recollection of our late granddad, where we can see that this game implements a choice system. The decisions made in this sequence won't be important, but the same can't be said of the other things you'll decide on, which definitely ups this game's replay value. For now, we meet our main character, May. She's a college dropout who's trying to get home, except her parents never showed up. So after helping this mysterious janitor get a soda, which in turn helps us get used to the controls, we make the long trek home. Through the woods. This lets us see the platforming element at hand. There is a triple jump that can get us through most obstacles, even if, as far as I can tell, there's no way to really die. I do find it weird that I have to jump on slopes or stairs to climb them if a path were to split from the ground. But in any event, you make it out and land in front of your Aunt Molly, who is also a cop. Ooh. She takes you home so you don't cause any more trouble. You find your dad, who believes he thought you were supposed to come back the following day, but he's otherwise chill to see you. Now, naturally, with how the characters look, there's not much in the way of expressions, but their eye and hand movements do enough to tell you how they're feeling. Considering how far she had to walk to get home before being picked up by a cop, you bet she's going to be mad. And as you gradually get into this game's narration style, feeling out each character's mood while reading out their lines starts coming naturally to you. I will say right now that this is the kind of game you can play with friends on a stream night and have fun with giving each character a distinctive voice. Here's another thing to get used to: seeing the same going to bed and waking up animations when passing through the days in this game. There will be things that'll happen in between, but for now, we wake up and play the bass. This was added in the Weird Autumn game update, and it's a rhythm minigame, much like you do during the band sessions you have later. It starts simple, but it can get a bit difficult later on depending on the song. Of course there are other things to do, but my one playthrough of this game mostly involves chatting with relevant characters and doing whatever minigames there are there. It starts with the parents. May's mother, Candy, seems like a well-meaning figure who worries about her daughter, even if she doesn't totally understand what's going on. We later learn that she's furious that May dropped out because it invalidates all the sacrifices she made to put her in higher ed. But we also learn that Candy did not do this for the latter's sake. She's also doing this to live vigorously through her daughter, since the mother never got a chance to go to college and look successful. There's clearly a lot of moral grayness from all the characters involved, and the game is very good at showing these imperfections that make characters relatable. That sort of detail in character writing isn't just present for the main cast. Even background characters come with their own emotional baggage that you can tease out over time. There's at least one NPC I noticed who appeared to be pregnant while on the streets, and then by the time the game started to end, she had the baby. But back to the main story. May catches up with her old bandmates, or what's left of them anyway. First there's Bay, a crocodile who was one of May's closest friends before becoming more distant. We'll get to why this happens. Next are Greg the fox and Angus the bear. They are currently in a relationship. I didn't spend much time with Greg, but I did enjoy one thing about him: crimes! Greg is definitely like the delinquent buddy who means well, but just can't stay out of trouble for one reason or another. And May knows how that feels given her own criminal record, like stealing a belt buckle from a mall, or making a fish statue squirt water on guests. Yeah, you all be some kind of trash animal. But from what I can find, May is put into an uncomfortable position with Greg, since she is sorta enabling him by not saying much about his criminal shenanigans, even while Angus is trying to keep him out of trouble. I don't know how that scenario compares with Bay's story, but if the latter scenario is any indication, it feels like a big deal. And for the one member who isn't here, there's Casey. You can find his poster on this one notice board, along with some yarn you can bounce. Funny. Your friends think that he might have skipped town, but then you find an arm. A severed arm just lying on the ground. So guess what you do? Everyone is in their early 20s, and yet May does the thing that a small child would likely do. This is the first sign that something is up with the town, but while you try to get to the bottom of this mystery, you're still trying to live up as normal a life as possible. This becomes impossible, however, when everyone is flying off the handle around you. Yeah, lots to unpack when we do get into her arc. The next day, you have to ask Angus to fix your laptop full of spam and malware. He and Greg live in an apartment whose button is broken, so you have to break in somehow by pressing the hole after pressing another button. Looks painful. After some technobabble, you can do a quick chat with your friends with the computer for some additional dialogue. And there's this little app called Demon Tower that you can play if interested. It's pretty fleshed out for a minigame, but I didn't play it too long since it feels like too deep a rabbit hole. Then it's on to a party. A night in the woods. Get it? There's also tacos with the family, and May gets a bit of time in the mirror to prepare herself. You can definitely tell she has some self-confidence issues. Some of it comes from weight problems, and it's also about her worries that her friends don't actually like her. So May certainly has the most room to grow, which is why she's the most relatable character in the story. Once she's at the party, she runs into a guy she once dated named Cole. She tries to hit it off, which leads to her getting a drink of beer. That's all it takes to get her hammered. No, please, keep going. I'm just dying to learn more about you. Seems whatever happened in college really got stuck in her craw, because now she's openly demeaning her experience there and making fun of the rich kids she met in school. Maybe that's why she forgot about Bay's mother dying of cancer during senior year? Or maybe that's when they disconnected and she genuinely didn't know. But it's here where Bay confronts May, and as far as we know, she just left because she felt like it, though she still cares enough to take you home after the drinking. The last thing to happen before the end of part 1 is a dream sequence where you smash things with a baseball bat, including a giant statue of a bird pointing down. This will come into play later when we start learning more about May. The next day, after band practice, we get a choice in who we can hang out with. I picked Bay, since I found her to be the most interesting character. But depending on who we interacted with the most, the game's ending can differ. We learned that these two did have issues with one another growing up. They liked each other enough that Bay tolerated some of May's crazy schemes, like stealing that belt buckle I mentioned. But during her meddling with the fish statue, which May pretends to be God in controlling it, Bae becomes quite amused. In another event, the two have dinner with Bae's father. I ended up botching the food choices, so no achievement for me. It's here where we see how the loss of Bae's mother caused a ripple effect on the surviving family. The dad doesn't seem to be pulling his weight in the family business anymore, leaving most of the work to his daughter. May then tells Bae that she should quit, but obviously it's not that simple. Bae is living under the same roof as her father, so if she's quitting, she's gonna get an earful about it. So it's another instance of May coming off as insensitive to her friend's problems. But at least the relationship doesn't get derailed, since Bae knows that her friend is trying to help. Still, the main character needs to do better next time. Now, starting with part 2, there will be nights where you dream of yourself in a disjointed maze-like town. You need to look for musicians who appear inside these little towers. You go to these beacons that lit up to see one of these. Now, this is likely due to whatever entity we meet later, as well as May's personal issues, and the weirdness only accelerates after watching a play held by Bae's family business. May sees a random person being kidnapped by a cloaked figure. She goes after them when no one else does, and has a stare down with the culprit on the hill. I know it's nighttime, but I thought you cats had good night vision. On a personal note, I thought Molly was stopping May because she might be in on this whole scheme, but we'll get back to that later. For now, the next dream May has is creepy and foreboding. There's this well in the middle of the woods that might have some relation to the mysterious ghost you encountered. So you bring it up with your friends, who agree to help you despite their skepticism. We get more branching paths in how you proceed through the story, and I think the plot advances after the set amount of days pass. Each of your friends agree to take you to different parts of town to find information, but I only did 2 of them. One day I spent doing one of the most important Bae events so far, and that sequence convinced me that she was my favorite supporting character. You learn about a party being held a few hours away from town, and Bae reluctantly invites you because the host is a good friend of hers, Jackie. You all dance for a bit, and you meet this one girl who Bae opens up to about the dreams she's having. Sounds like she has a thing for her. And then... well, don't expect her to come back. Or maybe she does and I missed it. Bae and Jackie are seen chatting with some college kids, and May again loses her cool. She openly brags about not needing higher ed, and Bae is trying her damnedest to get her friend to stop. And when May doesn't, the crocodile just runs the hell away. Jackie calls out the main character for being an ass, and we finally get why May's rant about college really irked her friend. This game speaks to many who felt that their lives have hit a dead end, and despite wanting to move away to do something different, circumstances have forced them to live in the same place for the rest of their lives. So when someone tells them that these new experiences aren't all that's cracked up to be, people like Bae don't take it well, because what exactly is so good about staying put? May tries to relate to Bae by saying how her own life feels just as rudderless, and she talks about one of the dreams where she appears to have met God, or what she thinks is God, who acts cryptically and is kind of an asshole. The main thing is, May is like Rhea from Slightly Damned. Both are genuinely good people, but have trouble opening up due to bad experiences in the past. Speaking of opening up, the last thing I did before the plot kicked into overdrive was go to the park with Angus to look for ghost sightings. We learn more about his upbringing and his abusive family in particular. He was so scarred from the ordeal that his views of God and the paranormal shifted, but he's now in a better place due to Greg. So Greg the delinquent isn't the only one who feels saved from the relationship, and the feeling is mutual. We finally spot the mystery ghost again, so May and Angus make their escape by car. However, May starts feeling weird, so she calls a meeting to update everyone on her status. She thinks this ghost is in her head because she's now thinking things she shouldn't be, so now her bandmates have even more reason to help her. They head back into the woods, at night, and eventually discover what is really haunting the town. A cult. So yeah, apparently some of the members in town are part of some freaky cult. For what? You'll see. For now, the gang tries to make a break for it when they get spotted. I instinctively have May jump over rocks because I'm not sure if I can die here. But it doesn't matter. May gets shot. The next day, we're controlling Bay, who is hiding with her friends at Greg and Angus's apartment now that the cult might be after them. May is also missing, but we soon see her wounded and trying to get back home. This is when the game becomes very Silent Hill. There's fog covering the town, no one is around, and there don't appear to be houses anywhere. She was told that her parents might be losing the house, so maybe she's starting to believe that's what happened. But said parents find her, take her to a church, and we get caught up on what had happened. She's then taken to the hospital to get her injuries treated, only for May to wake up and talk about how everything is dead. After getting home, she heads to the apartment where she tries chatting with her friends despite her current state. She's really out of it, can't chow down on pizza without gagging on it, so she asks the person she interacted the most in the story, in this case Bay, to hang out with her for the night. Here's where she finally gives more detail about what made her freak out about college. It started when she was 14, actually, when May started seeing people and the world as nothing but odd shapes. This caused her grief because she couldn't feel any connection to anything around her. They're all just stuff. She got in trouble when she beat some kid with a baseball bat, so her doctor gave her a notebook where she can vent by writing and drawing stuff. Not that the doctor was that helpful, but there was nothing too soul-crushing until she got to college. Once there, things got worse for her, to the point where she was afraid to leave her room or eat properly. She left after 3 semesters, hoping that she could be around people who she didn't see as dead shapes. Like, damn! The best I can come up with is that this is an implied case of depersonalization disorder, which is rare among the general population, but can be caused by depression and other similar afflictions. It's clear that May is definitely affected by this problem, and while it doesn't excuse her behavior in some instances, her friends now try to be more aware of the potential swings she can have due to this condition. And after the heart-to-heart with May decides she'll do her part to confront this problem since she's already asked for so much help from everyone. She confronts the cultists by herself, only to get unexpected backup from her friends who show up with a crossbow. They tell her that she doesn't have to go it alone, so they all proceed to go into the abandoned mine, where the cultists were last seen. Now, earlier, while researching for ghost sightings, The band also came across articles about a miners' strike after their workplace closed down for good. I'm led to believe that these ex-miners are involved in this nasty cult business, and soon our heroes eventually get caught by them near a giant pit. We then get the lowdown for what the cult is trying to do. They're sacrificing victims here to revive an entity known as the Black Goat, who will hopefully bring back prosperity to the town. The existence of the Black Goat would have already been mentioned depending on your earlier choices, but either way it does sing to people. This explains why she had those weird dreams recently, though perhaps this is just the guy talking crazy by affiliating mental illness to whatever god is trying to talk with them. The cult leader also goes on about sacrificing only specific types of people, those who don't contribute to society, and immigrants. Why does this sound so dang familiar? And it's implied that Casey was one of the victims because of his preference for music. They also try justifying their actions by pointing to the reward of their town roaring back to life, but everything we've seen shows that the sacrifices have no effect. At any rate, May and company are allowed to leave so long as they eventually join the cult and spread its words. Because these old farts aren't going to replace themselves. As they leave, we see that one of the cultists caught up to them, because as we've seen earlier, he can apparently phase through walls. And then... how did he get up there for starters? And also, he's totally dead from that. If he didn't lose his head, then falling to his death will likely do it. Still, the heroes are trapped underground and need to find a way out. May tries to go through the river, but is then seemingly sucked in by the Black Goat. She admits her life story to this entity, who only speaks in glyphs, but then stumbles upon the one good thing that can come from dying here. This gets May to snap out of it, and she finds an opening to escape with her friends. No one else believes they can scale it, but May is here to show them that it can be done. She peers out what looks to be a well, and we see that Germ, a friend of the band, actually lives nearby and helps them all get out by rope. So everyone's fine. Well, except they might have sort of murdered a bunch of old dudes, but that was in self-defense. And I'm sure it was an accident that the mine collapsed, so they're probably going to die from hunger or suffocation. Sometime later, May writes to her friends online to show her gratitude towards them despite her shortcomings. Thus, we enter the final day of the game, where we can talk to all the NPCs we want before we do the final scene. May decides she'll eventually tell her parents about why she left college, and Aunt Molly is still here despite my suspicions of her being a part of the cult. I mean, she hasn't really been investigating the kidnappings, and at one point in the original release, she was absent in the epilogue. But with the weird autumn update, she is seen responding to the missing person calls. Yep, lots of people in this town are jerks. Once you've done enough talking, you can gather and talk to your friends again. You first have a chat with the person you hung out with the most. In my case, Bae. They go over how they managed to go through life despite knowing how bad the world is, and ultimately come to the conclusion that they just need to do the best they can, every day, and to hang with friends and enjoy things together. Because yeah, everything will have to end, but this fact doesn't have to be on our minds all the time. And if you need to face this darkness, you don't have to do it by yourself. So that's Night in the Woods. If it isn't obvious already, I think it's amazing. In fact, I don't think I've ever related this much to a video game story like I've done here. I really sympathize with May, her friends, and their struggles to get through life as they age into adulthood. And it's a very real feeling to have when everything around you isn't what it's used to be. And it's especially haunting when the past just felt easier and more carefree. But instead of wallowing in restorative nostalgia like the cultists did, the true mark of maturity comes from adapting to the world as is. Be sad about the state of things, but don't let it overwhelm you with despair. Easier said than done, of course, but this game also reminds you that you're not alone in coping with an unmerciful world. We may fight with our own personal demons and each other, but we still care for each other to not burn bridges. So we do what we can to help out and learn from our own mistakes. Nothing is hopeless, worthless, or meaningless, because you matter. Those are the big takeaways as far as themes go. And otherwise, it's a tightly written story. Again, there's so much life in the town and its denizens that you could spend hours just doing the various activities that are there. The art direction is near perfect for that experience, especially given the times they set the mood with their lighting, and the soundtrack is amazing. Besides a few nitpicks regarding stairs and slopes, I don't really have anything bad to say about the game itself. The only reason I would think for someone to not pick up this title would be the fallout that came after release. Specifically, the accusations around Alec Holoka, who was accused of physical and emotional abuse by his former partner, Zoe Quinn. That saga led to Infinite Fall cutting ties with Holoka, and not long after, he committed suicide. I have little to add about the allegations presented. It's just that someone would bring this up if I didn't. I guess how you feel about these revelations is up to you, but I would say that this game wasn't just made by Alec alone. There was an entire creative team that had their own input and creative decisions brought forth. And if you're able to internalize the game's themes and become a better person for it, then maybe something good can come from the experience after all. The game is currently available on PC, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and even iOS, so take your pick. You might find yourself crying by the end of it with how artfully written the game was. There is a charm and realness to May and company that will likely stick with you for a very long time. I'm the Media Hunter. Media's my prey, and reviewing them my way.